and the ability to commute, limit, and forgive are indeed different positions. Could you help resolve?
Yes, I can. Resolving is a big demand, but I can speak about it. Yes, so it's a good question. The view that God is primarily the karma phala data in Sanskrit or in the North Indian languages. That is, that God is the dispenser of the fruits of karma, good and bad fruits of karma. That's a view which is especially promoted by the Advaita Vedanta school, where God is not so important. They believe that the God exists, but God is not central to Advaita Vedanta because it's about self-knowledge. Who am I? What is the self? What is I'm seeking the infinite. And God is there, accepted. There are various reasons why God is believed to exist, but the belief that God is the dispassionate karma phala data, the dispassionate grantor of the fruits of karma, that's a very intellectual formulation of the idea of God, which is not the primary view of the devotee. So that there may be, as Swami Ashokananda used to say, our Swami Ashokananda, who is in San Francisco, there are many different aspects to God. God is infinite, and so there are infinite aspects to God. But God as the karma phala data, that's a very insignificant part of God's existence for the devotee. For the Advaitin, it's enough because they're not really interested in God. They're interested in knowing the self. So the devotee doesn't emphasize that aspect of God at all. That's just sort of a mechanical aspect of God's presence. Like in a family, there's a man like yourself, Raj, who may be, and I don't know your personal life and it doesn't matter, but let's suppose that you are a father, you're a husband, you have a job, a profession and so forth, but you're also the person who pays the electric bill. Well, nobody thinks of you as the person who pays the electric bill except for the electric company. It's not an important part of your identity. It's something that happens, but that's not the way anybody thinks of you. Oh, Raj, oh yeah, I know him. He's the one who pays the electric bill. No. So God has various aspects that are just part of the very existence of God. But that's very insignificant. For the devotee, even God as creator is insignificant. Ramakrishna always downplayed the idea of God as creator. Yes, the creation comes out of something. God is the source of the creation. But that also is not the aspect of God which is important to us. The aspect of God which is important to us is the giver of liberation, the grantor of devotion, the grantor of supreme knowledge, the source of all love, love itself, knowledge itself, consciousness itself. That is who God is to the devotee. So the other is just sort of a mechanical part of the fact that God exists. So again, that's given very little importance.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Swamiji. Nitya, go ahead and unmute yourself. And Nitya, just say where you're zooming in from.
Pranam Swami. I'm zooming in. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm zooming in from California.
Yes. Hi, Nitya.
Hi, Swami Pranam. Okay, so this is the question I had sent to you through email. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to read it out loud again. I feel more Christian now after initiation than during all my years as a practicing Catholic. However, I no longer would be considered a Catholic since my Ishta isn't specifically Christ. I feel a sense of loss and confusion with how to deal or move in my new faith and how to integrate my old religion and my new belief. That's my question.
Yes, that's a very good question, and a common question for people who were not born into the Hindu tradition or the Vedanta tradition. There are people in the West who are not technically born into the Hindu tradition, but they are born into the Vedanta tradition. But for those of us, like myself also, who were born into another tradition, Christianity or Judaism or Islam, etc., and who came to Vedanta, that's a typical experience. Some come to Vedanta because they don't like Christianity and they don't want anything to do with it. Others come because they found something missing and they're looking for spirituality. And then when they find Vedanta, they find that, oh, it was there in Christianity all the time, but it was just never presented to me. And so they often come back to Christianity with a new appreciation. Many people, myself included, find after coming to Vedanta that suddenly we look on Christianity, if that's the tradition we grew up in, we look on it with different eyes, with new eyes. And we see the beauty of it. We see the greatness of the saints. We see the greatness of Jesus, of Mary, etc. And so that's good. That's like recapturing something that was lost to you. And so that should be encouraged, not discouraged. It doesn't mean that you are disloyal to Vedanta because suddenly through Vedanta, you have found a new appreciation of Jesus and of Mary, the Christian saints, etc. However, when that happens, there is work to be done. Work to be done means that we are initiated into the Vedanta tradition. We have an Ishta Devata, perhaps Ramakrishna or Holy Mother or something else. Some are even given Jesus as their Ishta Devata in the Vedanta tradition. But we have an Ishta Devata, and suddenly we find a newfound love for our roots. And so what we need to do, the work we have to do, is not to deny either one and not to work one against the other, but to develop both and to learn to integrate them. The great German mystic, Meister Eckhart, the most Vedantic of all the Christian mystics, the closest, he's been compared, and books have been written comparing him to Shankaracharya. He said that any two genuinely spiritual ideas, spiritual ideas that are genuine, that are actually true, experiential true, that are actually true, can always be harmonized. There's not a disharmony between any two genuinely spiritual ideas. And so Christ and Ramakrishna, Mary and Holy Mother, mystical Christianity and Vedanta, they can be harmonized because they are true. So what we have to do is to seek the point of harmony and not to use one against the other. Not to say, well, I've come to Jesus now, and so I'll forget about Ramakrishna, or I've come to Ramakrishna now, so I'll have to deny Jesus. No, we learn to see the point of connection between them, so that both our devotion to both leads us in the same direction. And that's easy to do with Ramakrishna in particular, because there were Christian devotees, Indian Christians, who came to Ramakrishna and actually had the vision of Jesus in him. And they came away telling the other disciples that I saw him as my chosen ideal, who is Jesus. And I am convinced that Jesus has come again in this form. And so it takes time, and it takes some effort and openness to the process to not deny either one, but to bring the two together in my own heart and my own consciousness, and to overlay one over the other, so that I begin to see that which is common to both of them.
Thank you, Swami.
Okay, Nitya.
Thank you, Swami. Swami, just in regards to this, I'm just going to add a little bit of question here.
Yeah.
I work as a chaplain at UCSD Hospital. I come across a lot of Catholic patients. And one of the difficulties and challenges I face is when they talk about how the sin process and how they feel like a sinner and they are not living up to God's word. How do you talk to someone? How do you alleviate their anxiety, not changing their structure of belief, but by working with the patient who has that belief? And how do you sort of affirm the positive in them and take away the sin side?
Yes, no, that's a very difficult thing. That, as the saying goes, that's a little beyond my pay grade. Because it takes knowing the person and their particular how much of that idea of sin they have absorbed and how deeply it's gone and all of that. There are ways that you can talk to people from within. For such a person, well, let me start over. For such a person, you need to talk to them from within the Christian or Catholic tradition, not from outside saying, well, the Vedantic view is this. No, the person is a lifelong Catholic. That's what they know, that's what they believe, and that should be reinforced. But within Catholicism itself, there are many theologians who have been rethinking the whole idea of fallen humanity, the whole idea of original sin. People like Matthew Fox and others, not just Matthew Fox, but others also, who have tried to, Teilhard de Chardin, the great French Jesuit, also, who tried to find a new way of looking at humanity that didn't look on them as sinners. So there's the idea, of course, goes back to the beginning of the everyone being made in the image of God. And the original idea of sin was the words, the original word in Hebrew, which I don't know, meant to miss the mark. Like in archery, if you're shooting at a target, you miss the mark, and sin meant to miss the mark. And so to reinterpret for the person, to help them reinterpret the idea of sin and the image of God within them, that's what's important. It's not what covers the image of God within them that's important, which is given so much importance in the idea of sin, but it's the fact that you are made in the image of God. That's what's important. The fact that, yes, we all make mistakes, but those are mistakes. That's part of life, and we learn from mistakes. So anyway, those are just some ideas that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, thank you. Those are great. Rashmi, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste, Rashmi.
Namaste. Not a question, I have a request that I had even during the retreat. I want to hear you speak of Mother Kali and her glory.
Okay. Oh, that's an easy question. That is, it's not a problem to solve. It's just talking about Mother Kali. So, of course, as you know, but in answering questions, I have to address everyone, because there's the person who asked the question, and then there's the audience who's hearing the response. So, as probably everyone here knows, the idea of the motherhood of God is that there, just as with God, there are many different ways of seeing God. There are many different ways of looking at the motherhood of God. There's the image, going back to Nitya's question about Christianity. There's the Mother Mary. There's Holy Mother Sarada Devi. There's Saraswati. These are all images of God which are gentle, which are non-problematic for the average person. Durga begins to become a little problematic for many people because Durga is very heroic. She shouldn't be a problem, but she is for some. I'm speaking mainly about Westerners who come to Vedanta. Swami Swahananda, he used to always say, what type of mother do you want? Do you want a namby-pamby mother or an all-conquering mother? Well, we grow up thinking, all of us thinking that our mother is all conquering. Our mother can do anything. And that is Durga, who has 10 arms because she is active in all 10 directions. The cardinal points, the 8 points of the compass, and above and below. So she has 10 arms to work in all directions and is all conquering. And Mother Kali is even more difficult for some. But it's surprising how many people born outside of the Hindu tradition who come to Vedanta, who fall in love with Kali. Sister Nivedita, the Irish-English disciple of Swamiji, she was an example. She fell deeply in love with the idea of Kali, and for the rest of her life, she was a Kali devotee. So Kali is probably the most profound symbol of God that exists, as far as a personal symbol of God goes. Kali is She's pictured as being naked because she's the naked truth. She's the way that the world actually appears. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes life-giving, sometimes death-dealing. That is the world that we see. And so in Mother Kali, she's standing on the chest of Shiva, who she's the, in the traditional thinking, she's the consort of Shiva. She's the divine mother, and Shiva is the consciousness itself, the absolute. And so as Sister Nivedita says, Kali is the vision of Shiva. When the pure consciousness looks out and sees the dance of this universe, Kali is that dance. So all of this that we see is the dance of Kali. Birth and death, good and bad, pleasure and pain, everything is there. But the meaning of Kali is not that she is, she's partly good and partly bad. No, the idea is that she's the all-loving mother. And we see things as good and bad as they affect us. But behind all of them is the Divine Mother, is the all-loving Mother Kali. That this whole universe is just her play, just her dance. I have perhaps used the analogy at Asilomar because I've used it frequently in recent months when speaking of devotion, or when speaking of the path of knowledge as well. We go to a movie and people ask us afterwards, oh, how did you like the movie? And we say, oh, I loved it. It was wonderful. I cried for 2 hours. Throughout the movie, I was crying. It was wonderful. What? You cried for 2 hours and it's wonderful? Well, yes, because it was a movie. It was a sad movie, a nostalgic movie, or a sad movie, or a tragic movie. And I cried for 2 hours, we say. But we loved it. And so for the person who can see that Mother Kali is behind everything, the whole of life and everything that happens is a beautiful, dramatic dance of the Mother Kali, which we are watching. Whenever we get too involved in things where the weight of existence comes down on us, the weight of problems, the weight of the problems in the world are too much for us, all we have to do is to stand back, practice a little detachment, and just see that everything is the dance of Mother Kali. And everything is okay because it's her dance. It's her dance. It's because we get so involved in things that we forget that, and then everything looks like it's a life and death matter of ultimate seriousness. Now that seemed, let me address a potential problem for many people, because I've had this problem presented to me by people. Many people feel that to say what I just said takes the seriousness out of other people's suffering. But no, that's not the case. The person who sees Mother Kali behind everything knows how difficult life is and how difficult, how much suffering there is in the world. And they know how difficult it is to back up and be detached and see everything with detachment. And so they have greater compassion for those who suffer because they know the difficulty of being attached to life and the suffering that it involves. But except for their compassion for others, they're able to see everything as a dance. It's a wonderful practice every day to just sit back, try to detach yourself, and just try to see everything as a dance within your consciousness. You are the screen of consciousness, the light in which everything is happening, and just to see it as you would see a movie. With the good and bad in the movie, the crime scene, the resolution and everything, you enjoy all of it. But because you know it's a movie. And the same thing, if we can see all of existence as the dance of the Divine Mother, then we see everything in a context of beauty.
Thank you, Swami.
Swami, excuse me for just a second. I'm going to close the door of my office because it's raining and the rain is making a lot of noise on the awning. Sure. And so I can't hear well. So I'll be right back in 5 seconds.
Okay, all right, no problem. In the meantime, Swali? Okay, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Can you tell us where you're zooming
from?
And
I'm back. I am back.
Namaskar, Swami. I'm Savli. I'm from the DC area, and I had a basic question. So I apologize in advance that builds on Nitya's question. And that's, if you are a Kali devotee or a Krishna devotee, or how do you reconcile that with your newly given Ishta when you go to those types of events? Like if you're doing a Janmashtami puja, like are you, like on a practical level, are you seeing that within your new Ishta? Are you seeing your, like, are you projecting, are you diverting that puja to the
Yes,
chosen?
that's a good question, and that's a common problem that many have. It is sort of related to Nietzsche's question also about having been brought up in Christianity and now having an Ishta who's different from Christ or Mary, and being attracted to both and not knowing what to do. There are different approaches that you can do, and the same person can use different approaches according to the time, according to your mood of the moment. One thing is to, let me start over. The most basic thing, no matter what your approach is, the most basic thing to understand, and to understand it deeply enough so you begin to feel it. And that takes time, but it will come if you allow it to come, is to know that your Ishta manifests as all possible Ishtas. There's a grand spiritual experience that Ramakrishna used to say comes to one at a high level of their spiritual life, where they see their Ishta turning into all possible Ishtas. They see the Ishta becoming all of the different deities and all of the different incarnations, all of the possible ideals of God. And then they understand at a deep experiential level that their Ishta is everything and is all aspects of God. So develop that conviction, know it intellectually, and then hold on to it. So if you know that my Ishta, the Ishta I was given in initiation, is all possible in Ishtas, then I can go like to Janmashtami Puja to worship Krishna and have that conviction that my Ishta is appearing to me as Krishna. But you don't have to deny Krishna. You don't have to say, well, really, this is Ramakrishna. I'm actually worshiping Ramakrishna, not Krishna. No, you can worship Krishna. And I say that just for the argument's sake, say your Ishta is Ramakrishna. You don't have to deny Krishna and say, oh, I'm actually worshiping Ramakrishna, not Krishna. No, you're worshiping Krishna. But Ramakrishna was Krishna. You go to Ram Navami. Rama is my Ishta. You go to a Christian church, Jesus is my Ishta. My Ishta is Ramakrishna, but this is another form of Ramakrishna. I can worship Jesus as Jesus, knowing that he's Ramakrishna. I can worship Krishna as Krishna, knowing that he is, there's no difference. I can worship Kali as Kali, knowing that Ramakrishna was an incarnation of Kali. And so the main thing is to have that deep conviction that my Ishta is not separate from other Ishtas, but my Ishta is the same as all Ishtas. My Ishta is all Ishtas. And in my meditation, I look again to use this example. In my meditation, I meditate on and repeat the mantra of Ramakrishna. But when I go to Krishna Puja, Kali Puja, or wherever, that's Ramakrishna that I'm worshiping. And I can worship him as Krishna, as Kali. It just takes a little time. Always remember, and not just for your question, but for all questions, it's very important for all of us to remember that life, all of life is practice. All of life is practice. We start as babies practicing. And as children, all of their games are really practicing skills they need for when they grow up. And when we grow up, also, all that we do is practice. We're trying to get better and better at our profession, at our married life, at our social life, at everything. If we remember that everything is practice, and I'm an unfinished product, and that's okay. It's okay that I'm unfinished. But I'm finishing myself through this practice, and that's okay. The mistakes I make are just mistakes along the way. As we all know, that's why children are so good with the computers, because they're not afraid of breaking the computer. Whereas adults are afraid that, oh, if I push the wrong thing, it's going to cause problems. And so I don't want to push anything because I don't know what I'm doing. Kids just get in there and start seeing what happens when you push buttons. So if we take that approach to life, just realizing that, no, everything is practice. That things are not as serious as we take them. Let me just do the best that I can. That's all I need to do.
Swami, what would your opinion be then about regarding, so it's practice, but then also putting pressure on yourself to feeling that you have to get it done in this lifetime, as opposed to just, hey, as part of my practice, I'm just going to relax into it. Whatever I get done, I get done. Whatever I don't, that's okay also. What's your opinion about those 2 points of view?
Ideally, we need to combine both. That, of course, is difficult because they seem to be opposites. So ideally, we need to combine both. What I mean by combining both is that we have to realize that spiritual life is the ultimate life. It's the life which solves all of life's problems when we get to the end of it. And therefore, it takes a long time. And I may not come to the end of it in this life. And I have to be okay with that. So I have to have that long range view of things, that whatever I'm doing now is building for the future, whether I finish in this life or whether it takes another lifetime. It doesn't matter, because everything is building towards that, and eventually I'll get there. On the other hand, we want to develop the intensity of longing, because the intensity of longing is what gets us there. It's that which allows us to move quickly in the spiritual life towards the goal. So ideally, we want to have intense longing with the patience to wait for several lifetimes to get it done, if necessary. That, of course, is easier said than done, but eventually we find that it's possible, again, with practice. If we know these two ideas, and with everything in spiritual life and in life in general, if we know that there are two apparently contradictory ideas that we have to somehow harmonize in our lives, if we just hold on to both of them, eventually we begin to find that both of them become active in our lives, and we find an inner harmony between them. And so we find it easier and easier to do the best that I can, and at the same time have infinite patience for the results.
Seems like spiritual life is all about reconciling contradictions.
Yes, in one sense it is. It's walking like walking on the edge of a razor, neither falling to the right nor to the left, keeping your balance.
Is this what Sri Ramakrishna Samanvaya harmonizing is about?
Yes, Samanvaya is about that also. Yes, about the harmony of different ideals, the harmony of different paths, and the harmony of different aspects of ourselves.
Right.
And harmony of different aspects of life.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Indranil, go ahead.
Namaste, Swamiji. Good evening.
Namaste, Indranil.
Good evening. It's so nice to already see you.
Yes.
I'm from Dallas, as you probably know.
Yes, I
Okay.
remember you from Dallas.
Yes,
I met you there in June.
yes, exactly. So I have two basic questions very quickly. The first one is that during the session on meditative reading, you were reading a text of Sister Devamata, which describes
Yes.
many visions of Sri Ramakrishna. I thought the name of the text is Life of Sister Devamata, but I couldn't find the text. I was looking for the text.
No, it is, what is it? It is, gosh, I forget the name of it. But it's published through the the Vedanta Center of Cohasset, Massachusetts. They're a breakaway group from the Ramakrishna Order, but one that's very friendly with the order. And so they published it. So if you do a search for Cohasset, Massachusetts, Vedanta Society, Cohasset, Massachusetts, you'll find their website. And on the website, certainly you'll see the book, because it's the most recent book that they've published.
Okay, thank you so much.
And
Okay, so
the name of the title is right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite get it out.
no, but I'll look for it. I'll look for it.
Yeah.
Okay, the second question is that is about vak, or the word.
Yes. Yeah.
So my question is that I'm actually a beginner. So this word is always spelled with a capital W. So I think it probably means a very specific thing, just like knowledge when it is capitalized with K. So I know that I'm short. Can you very briefly explain what this word is and how it relates to Ma Kali, or the creation?
Yes, so vak is a wonderful concept. It means speech or word, and it's usually spelled in the traditional Sanskritic transliteration is V-A-K, but pronounced like W or V, Wak or Vak, and Bengalis will say Bak, but it's all the same word. So one use of the word is as a name. Vagdevi was a great rishi, the daughter of a rishi. Her father was himself a great Vedic rishi, and she is the one who had the first recorded Advaitic experience in the Vedas, in the Rig Veda, the Devi Suktam. She had the experience of identity with everything and the identity with the Divine Mother. And so she speaks as the Divine Mother, identified with all of creation and with the Absolute. So that's a special use of the word as a name for this rishi. It also is the same, it means the same as Vani, which is the name of Saraswati. So Saraswati is Vani and Vak. But again, coming back to the root meaning, it means the speech. And speech was examined a great deal in the Vedas, from the early, the Samhitas, all the way through the Upanishads, and later into the Tantras and Puranas and so forth. So there, Vak means, for one thing, again, Saraswati is the goddess of speech, but it also means the speech analyzed from a spiritual perspective. That is, when we think about creation, whether in science, material science, or in religions, we're thinking about the creation of form, that God made this stuff. Where did the earth, the trees, the animals, the plants, all of this come from? The creation of stuff. God is the creator of stuff. And so usually it's the creation of form, from the aspect of form. But there is also, in some spiritual traditions, the tracing of creation from the standpoint of word. And so that's the whole meaning of the syllable Om. All of creation has come out of the sound Om. Creation comes from word. And so in the Gospel of St. John, it begins, as Swami Vivekananda said, the whole of Christian theology is there, where St. John says, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all things that came to be came out of that Word. And so that is Vak. Vak is the spiritual, the primordial word out of which creation has come. And also that's why Saraswati is Vak, because she is the goddess from whom the word comes. And in ordinary speech, the Sanskrit grammarians found that ordinary speech, if you analyze it, any word, not just a mantra. Mantras are special words with a special connection to God, but any word can actually lead us back to the divine, because all words have come out of the divine. Bhartrihari, the great grammarian, spiritual grammarian, he said that the ancient grammarians, Sanskrit grammarians, that they began to examine the word, that is language, like a person who is looking through the straw for bits of coal or something that can be used for making a fire, but just looking for common things in a pile of straw. But he said, like the person looking through straw for bits of coal who comes across precious jewels, the grammarian started by examining words just to understand word as ordinary things. And there they found the priceless word, the word out of which creation itself has come. And so Vak refers to that. There's the spoken word that we hear with the ears. There is the word at the mental level, which is quite distinct. Mental word is quite different from the word we hear, that whether with the sound waves or even waves in water or through other material substances. There's the mental level of speech. Beyond that, there is the pashyanti level of speech, it's called in technical terms in grammar, which is the intuitive level, which is beyond the expression of word through letters and a series of sounds. It's just the intuitive level of word where the whole idea is contained without any breakup into letters and sounds. And then there is the Paravak, the supreme word, which is Brahman. And so out of Brahman has come the intuitive level of speech. Out of the intuitive level has come the mental level of speech. Out of that has come physical speech. So just the opposite of the scientific way of analyzing things. Science begins with external matter, tries to find out its source and everything. And they may get to more and more subtle levels of existence from examining physical matter. But the rishis, they started from the absolute and traced creation from there. And so one of the ways to do that is through Vak.
So I just have one quick clarification, if it is okay.
Yes.
So just like Om is the primordial sound that we cannot hear with our ears, is Vak the primordial speech that, as you mentioned, it's not expressible to our regular speech or regular mouth.
Om and Vak are not different. Om is the first expression of Vak. Om is the original expression of Vak. So they're not two different things. They're two different ways of thinking of the same thing.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So Swami, just to let you know, there's 8 people in line. We're not going to accept anymore. So Priya will be the last. No more questions. 8 people in line, okay? And we have a hard line of 30 minutes. We're going to go extend 15 more minutes. So 30 minutes, okay? 8 people.
Okay.
So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Swami, this is Sunny. I'm from San Jose, California. It's wonderful to see you again. Thank you for being here. I have a simple question, I think. How can we love God if our whole spiritual effort is to know God? And how can we love which we don't know very well?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a good question. To begin with, this won't make a lot of sense in the beginning, but I'll build on it. So Ramanuja, the great philosopher of devotion, he says that love is a special type of knowledge. Love is a special type of knowledge. And so we can know things without any love. We can know what pi r squared in geometry, what that means, the way to find the area of a circle, or 2 pi r to find the circumference of a circle. We know that, but there's no love involved. It's just knowledge. 2 times 2 is 4. We don't feel an upsurge of love when we hear that. It's just information. And then there's love, where we love a person, we love a place, we love a situation, where we don't think of that as knowledge. But love is always associated with knowledge. If we love a person, it's associated with the knowledge of that person. If we love a place, it's associated with the knowledge of that place. So love can never be separated from knowledge, but there can be knowledge that doesn't elicit love from us. And so in devotion, the problem is we're trying to love God whom we don't know. It's like trying to love someone we've never seen before, and we've only heard that somebody exists, and I try to develop love for them. Well, it's difficult to do. It's after we see the person, we talk to them, that we can develop love for them. And so the problem in devotion, the central problem, is developing love for someone we have not yet experienced, that is, for God, whom we haven't yet experienced. So we're trying to know and to love God at the same time. But first, we have to start with knowing a little bit about God. And so we read books, we read about the spiritual life, we read about meditation, we go to lectures or to a teacher of meditation and learn how to meditate. That is all part of the knowledge aspect. We have to do that because it's like trying to love someone we haven't met yet. We first have to, if we feel that it's someone that I want to love, I first have to know who they are and know about them. So we first have to learn about God, learn about the spiritual life, learn about spiritual practices. And at that stage, all we can really do is want to love God. I want to learn to love God. I don't yet do it, but I want to learn to love God because for some reason I've understood the value of it somehow. Or I've read books about saints who did it and I want to be like that. Or I feel empty and I feel that that is a way that I can feel fulfillment. And all of that is true. And so I begin by thinking about God, learning to think about God, learning how to meditate on God, learning how to pray. And it's through that the knowledge of God, as it begins to grow, which starts just as intellectual knowledge like anything else, but it begins to develop into the beginnings of love. We begin to feel a little attraction and then more attraction. As Ramakrishna said, the more you handle fragrant flowers, the more the perfume comes to your hands. And so the more you think about spiritual things, the more you begin to get the scent of spiritual things. And then you begin to feel more that I still don't really love God, but I want to love God. I love the idea of loving God, and I want to go there, but I can't get there. So all we have to do is to keep going in that direction, and love grows by itself. Each of us has a natural love inside of us, but life, as the baby is full of love, but we learn to guard our love because we can easily be hurt by loving the wrong things or opening ourselves to the wrong things. The trouble is, we learn that so well that then it's hard to love. And then again, there's the problem of loving someone we haven't seen, loving God whom we haven't seen. So we have to learn how to open the love which is naturally inside, to open that again towards God. And that happens just through thinking about God and working with the idea of God.
Thank you. Thank you, Swami.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Swami. Sorry, Cyan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Namaste, Swami Atmarupananda ji. I'm speaking from California.
Good side.
My gratitude to Swami Harinamananda ji for organizing this. So I have
Yeah.
a question about the role of karma from a bhakti perspective. So how do I know I'm doing enough? Do I seek out more work? So in other words, is there a harmony of yogas that comes naturally to different individuals and we stick to that?
Now, work, you mean the professional work or spiritual work, or what kind of work are you
Spiritual
talking
work like seva, like, I mean, do I do more and do I do seek out more, or is there something like there is a balance because there is, yeah.
Yes, there's a balance. One can volunteer for so much that one is completely distracted by all the things that one has to do, because you've volunteered so much of your time that you can't even fulfill the things you're supposed to do for those voluntary activities. So always start by seeing what's in front of you that you can do, that should be done. Start by finding out, what are my real duties? Not what I think are duties, the things that I have taken on myself because I want them to be duties, but what are my real duties? The things that if I don't do these things, I'm a worse person. If I don't take care of my family, if I don't do my work properly, if I have a profession, if I don't take care of the things that are my real responsibilities, I'm a worse person for that. So my real duties are those things that if I don't do them, I become a worse person. I become an irresponsible person and not somebody that anyone would look up to. So those are my real duties. And then there are things that I can add on top of that, voluntary things, seva and things like that. That's good. Everyone should learn to incorporate some seva in their lives. Maybe your ordinary daily life contains enough opportunities as it is because of your work or family or whatever. But it's good to have to do something for others that is not required of you by duty. That is, not just the things, say if I'm a doctor and if I'm a married man with a family, or a married woman with a family, not just what I have to do as a doctor, and not just what I do for my family, but I should also at least spend some time, reasonable amount of time within my capacity, for something which is beyond just my self-interest and my own family's interest, not just the duties that I have to perform because I'm a doctor. It's good to have something that you do that is for others, which is not required that you do. And that do within balance. Always understand what Swami Vivekananda said repeatedly, over and over in different ways and in different contexts. He said, always remember that you cannot help the world. You can't save the world. You can't really help the world. The help that you give to others, the people have attracted to themselves. It's not because you're such a good person that you've helped people. No, the help, the universe itself arranged that help for these people. So don't work with the idea I'm going to save the world, because the world's problems are so big that you'll never get there. There are people who try to save every stray cat there is in the world. There's so many stray cats in the world that you never come to the end of them. If you take in a stray cat, fine, but don't start with the idea that I'm going to solve the stray cat problem of the world. If you feed a hungry person, that's wonderful, but don't start with the idea that I'm going to solve the problem of hunger in the world. No, the problem is much bigger than your capacity. So do that which is in front of you, do that which you can do that which is not required of you to do, but know that no one is called on to solve all of the problems of the world, because the world is the world, and that's not possible. So do everything within measure.
Pranam, Swami Atmarupananda ji.
Yes.
Such a pleasure to see you again. And before I just share my comment, I wanted to ask, is this the book Indranil was mentioning about? I bought it this year in January when I visited Belur.
No, that's not the book, but it is a wonderful book. So
Yeah,
please read
yes,
it.
yes.
It's a wonderful book.
Yes.
So it's not that, because there she tells about her life in India, and
Yes.
it was one of the early books I read when I joined the order. I found it in the Chicago library, Chicago Monastery Library, and beautiful. But this is life written about Sister Devi Mata, and was published just within a year or so.
Okay. I wanted to just say that during the Asilomar retreat, one of the most profoundly moving sessions for me was something probably only Swami Harinamananda ji could organize, is Life Inspires Life. And just the ambience of the room, in the dark, and knowing that that's not recorded and that's not going to be shared with anybody other than the room was really quite incredible. Those words will never go out of the room, I know, but I want to refer back to an essay of yours, which I had the privilege of translating. It's called, I have it here, Wisdom for the Digital Age.
Yes.
And Swami Medasananda asked me to do it for the Japanese audience. But what was remarkable is you created this whole essay, which was very useful for the younger generation, for all of us, by writing that you were very taken by some saying, by some teaching by Swami Vijnanananda. So what I'm wondering is, a lot of the times I feel a bit dejected when reading maybe a very profoundly complex writing by from the Vedas or the Upanishads, and then it's just easier to read something which is more relevant to my existential questions, for example. So I'm wondering, it's not that we want all the monks to share their own lives, but perhaps some experiences which move them, which would be relevant to us. And I wonder if there is would it be possible at some point to consider writing such not a memoir, but more like advice coming directly from you, not just the Upanishads and the Vedas, etc. That's all.
Sure. That is possible. There's nothing impossible possible about it. And let me just mention, not exactly in the line that you're speaking, but it touches on what you're talking about. Some of the direct disciples, like Swami Shivananda, he would tell people who would come to him that study our lives, meaning the lives of the direct disciples, that this is the new Veda, that Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, the Holy Mother, the direct disciples, the lay disciples of Ramakrishna, their lives, their teachings are the new Veda, and it's the new Veda written for the modern age. Not that the original Veda will be thrown out. No, that's the touchstone of the Hindu tradition. That's what lets us know that this is part of the same ancient lineage that comes down to the present day. But the lives of these great souls, this was lived in our time. This was lived in recent history. These are people who faced the world as that we are facing right now. And so their teachings are very accessible. The Vedas, the Upanishads are beautiful, but they're difficult to understand, and one has to study hard. It's worthwhile to study them, but the information there we have to learn, and it takes time to learn how to relate it to my life right now. But the direct disciples, they are right now. And their experience, they are the Vedic teachings, but lived in modern times. So it's a great thing. And other lesser people like myself, yes, certainly it helps to tell something of our life experience because people can relate to it.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Subhash, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Pranamas Maharaj. It's nice to see you. And we hope to see you in November too.
Yes, yes.
My question is specifically about japa and meditation. You had a whole session on japa and Asilomar retreat, which I hope to watch the record when it comes out. But japa leads to meditation is what I've been, reading and what I understand. But do you have to do it for a prolonged time for that to happen, and focus only on japa, not mixing with anything else like chanting or puja or whatever you are doing, other practices? Or you just do japa, and when you do long enough, it will lead to meditation, and japa stops at that point, or does it continue when you go into meditation?
Yes, and often times you'll hear people, our swamis, talk about you should do japa and dhyana. Japa and dhyana, japa and meditation, as if they're two different things. But for most of us, if we do japa, it's japa which eventually becomes a deep meditation. And so it's not that they're two contrasting things or two different things. One may do japa and also meditate on meditate in a different way also. That's possible. But japa, for many of us, japa is what we mainly do, and that eventually becomes meditation. But as far as puja and chanting and things like that, all of those things are good. For a long time, we can't do japa intensely enough for it to lead us directly to realization. It will in time, but it takes great concentration and development of presence of mind and the ability to absorb myself in the japa for that to happen. And so in the meantime, other practices have a great part to play. Most people cannot do japa for many, many hours every day. So a teacher of mine, my Upa Guru, he told me many years ago when I was with him in Mayavati, he said, it's good to have 2 or 3 different practices that you practice even during your formal meditation. Because if you just do one thing in your formal meditation, after a while, the mind gets tired and just says, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it starts thinking of other things, and it just becomes mechanical. And so he said, instead of that, if you have 2 or 3 practices, he said, usually not more than 3, because then it's just feeding the distractive nature of the mind. 2 or 3 practices, do one until the mind gets tired of it, and then do the next until the mind gets tired of it. And then if there's a third, do that until the mind gets tired of it, and then come back to the first, so that the mind is continually refreshing itself by a little bit of change. So like you can do japa for a while, then you can pray for a while, then you can do visualization for a while, if a person has the ability to visualize, not everyone does, and then come back to japa. Or one can do a little mindfulness practice and then do japa, and then come back to mindfulness practice and then come back to japa. About that last, let me just say about the dynamic that works there. mindfulness allows us to pay attention, to be present. It develops that capacity. It's not concentrative. It makes the mind present. And so the main problem in japa is it becomes mechanical. And we repeat the mantra for an hour, perhaps, and at the end of the hour, realize that my mind wasn't there at all. I was repeating it, but my mind was completely somewhere else. So mindfulness gives us the ability to be present. And so we do a little mindfulness practice, then we come to japa and apply that mindfulness. After a little bit, the mind gets tired, and again, it goes into mechanical japa. When I realize that, then come back to mindfulness, and then go to japa, and then again, the mind spins away. So like that, what we need to do eventually in japa is to learn to bring more and more of the mind into the japa. In the beginning, it just doesn't work. It becomes mechanical for everybody. And that may go on for some years. Don't be discouraged if it happens for years. That's normal for all of us. But as we practice, we should remember that what I want to do, what I'm aiming to do, is to absorb my attention in the japa. And gradually we'll find that at first for a few seconds we can do that, and then gradually longer and longer we can do it. Once we get, as Ramakrishna said, if we begin to find joy in doing japa, and that takes time, but if we begin to find joy in doing japa, the basic problem is solved. Then that joy will lead us to do it more, and gradually the mind will be absorbed in japa. So first, we shouldn't be afraid of mechanical japa. That's the way the mind gets accustomed to the sound and gets accustomed to what we're doing. But eventually we want to keep bringing the mind back to, what am I doing? I'm repeating the name of God, which is the divine itself. It is a name which is the manifestation of God. Let me pay attention to what I'm doing. And again, it only lasts for a few seconds, and then we lose track of what we're doing, but then we bring it back. So that is practice, bringing the mind again and again.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
I see hands of Kamala, Wade, and Priya.
Sorry, Wade, I'm sorry. Wade, I'm sorry. I was on mute. You can go ahead and speak your question now.
I think so. Can you hear me, Swami?
Yes, I do. Hi, Wade.
I've been wanting to visit you in Gretz, so this is the next best.
Well, do so physically also, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It'd be good to see you.
Decades ago, when I visited Gretz, people recited a teaching of Holy Mother in French. And I'm guessing that you still do it. It was done every day.
Yes.
Yeah, si vous désirez la paix de
La
l'esprit.
paix de l'esprit, ne voyez pas les défauts d'autrui, voyez plutôt les vôtres. Apprenez à considérer que l'univers tout entier n'est pas différent de vous-même.
Personne?
Personne ne vous est étranger. Le monde et vous-même, c'est tout un.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Well, I've come to love that prayer. Of course,
yes.
You know, I was initiated by Swami Sheshananda and his connection with Holy Mother, but I immediately I absolutely love that prayer. But I have a question, two questions. One is very simple. The occasion when Holy Mother gave that advice, I've forgotten. You may know. And the other was in at least in the French translation, and it may be in English, you know, not to see the faults of others, but see rather your own. So the question is how much to dwell on one's own faults, and you know, which can be upsetting. But I think it's good to see. It's good to see them and then correct them. But I was wondering, a slight change would be to see the faults of others not as faults of others, but as our own, because as human beings, we tend to have many of the same faults. So don't see the faults of others as their problem, but they're also our problem. It's part of human nature.
Yes, and that's what the Holy Mother used to say, that we can't see the faults of others unless we have those faults ourselves. That we're seeing when we see the faults of others, we're seeing our own faults.
Yes.
So that's the second part of your question, and that is true. The first part, I first, without telling others in the audience here, I first met Wade in Chicago around 1971, 70 or 71, something like that, when he came
that
to
sounds right,
University
a
of
few
Chicago.
years ago. Yes, indeed.
Yes, a few years ago. So Swami Bhashananda once was asked about seeing the faults of others or seeing one's own faults. And he said, that's good, but don't do too much of it. For the reason that you said, that it demotivates us if we're always looking at our faults. There was a period in Christian spirituality in the 18th and 19th centuries where spiritual directors, Catholic spiritual directors, their advice to everyone was to think about your own faults and to look at your own faults and everything. That became extremely depressing. And it was a very negative period in Christian spirituality. And there was a great French spiritual teacher. I think it was Jean-Pierre de Caussade. It might have been an Englishman, Alexander Baker, I forget which, but one or the other, was advising, it was the Englishman. He was advising French nuns. Because I remember it was an Englishman advising French nuns. And he found that the nuns were always dwelling on their own faults, examining conscience, as it was called. He said, don't do that. That, yes, your faults are there, but if you're in a room and you come through one door and you want to go, or say you come into a hallway through one door and you want to go through the hall to the other doorway, there are obstacles in the way. People have left junk there in the room, and you see the junk there that you have to walk over, step around, move a little bit so you can get through. But your object is not the junk. Your object is to get through the other door. So the faults that you have in yourself is just the junk lying around in the way of getting to where you want to go. So just deal with it as junk that you have to push aside and walk over. Don't dwell on it, because that only gives it more strength. So what the Holy Mother said is very true. Don't see the faults of others. That's the positive part. But then what she says about but rather see your own faults. There comes a time when we have developed a bright self-image that I am the Atman. I am a child of God. I am a spiritual aspirant. When we have that, then we can see our own faults, look at them and correct them. When we don't have that, we look at our faults and we just think, that's me. I am my faults. I am this bad person who does these things. No, at that point, looking at your own faults is counterproductive. First, learn to think of yourself as with a bright self-image, that I'm a child of God. I am the self. I am the Atman. I'm immortal. And these things which are in the way, that I have to get out of the way so I can realize that. And when that comes, then you can examine your own faults with great benefit, because they're no longer who you are. There's something that's in the way of where you want to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Wade.
Lolly, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
There.
Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste,
just like
Lali.
everybody else, all of these questions and answers have been so beautiful, and thank you so much. My thing is, I know, when we pray, and when we pray for, I've been told, yes, it's okay to pray for someone else, going through difficulty, they're praying, going through sickness. Sometimes it is, if I'm praying, God knows already what is good for everyone. And so in my mind, this conflict, you have to say, no, just pray that they feel divine strength. Yet, it must still be okay to tell them, yes, I'm praying for your health. Yes, I'm praying for your difficulties to be over, because that's what maybe will help them.
Yes, no, that's good, and it is good to pray for others, and it's effective also. It's not just good; it doesn't just make feel good that, oh, I'm so glad that Lali is praying for me. No, it actually has an objective effect. And you're right, that God already knows what people need. But when we pray for someone, we are connecting with that person and our thought, because we're all connected. We're all connected. It's the mind which projects everything out in space, but we're all right here at the same point. We're all right here. All hearts are connected. They're intimately connected with each other. And so when we pray for another, when we send out our prayers for another, for their welfare, for their health, whatever it is, for guidance, for strength, for feeling the divine presence, whatever, we are, that is adding adding the strength of our thought to them also, where we should think of prayer as digging a tunnel through the cloud of ignorance, drilling a tunnel through the cloud of ignorance. And through that prayer, we're opening ourselves to the divine influence, and we're opening that divine influence for the other person also. So God does know what everyone needs, but prayer has an effect because we're all connected.
Okay.
Thank you, Swami. So two more questions. Priya and Kamala.
I'll answer them quickly.
Hi,
Priya. There you go.
Priya. It's good to see you. I'll be quick. So, how to talk the parts of love of God and self-inquiry, which is different from the knowledge question that was asked earlier. So, most of us feel natural love towards Thakur Mother, and we do our practices, try to do our best, read about them, get to know them. But soon our devotion gets limited by the selfishness. And so we try to expand that sense of self by self-inquiry, sort of like trying to build our qualifications. But is it possible to try to lead the life as an instrument of God while trying to know who you are through self-inquiry? Because, we have both logical and emotional sides. So the way I think about this is kind of like what Swami Sarvapriyanandaji says, you have to turn that hand inwards. You are using love to realize you are the 10th man.
What is the last thing you said, usually?
Swami Sarvapriyananda tells this story of a 10th man. So maybe I'm confusing this, but I think of this as trying to use the love of God to turn that hand inwards to realize you are the 10th man.
Yes, no, I'm not sure that I understand that, but let me just hazard an answer as far as I understood what you said. Self-inquiry and love of God and surrender to God, they certainly can go together. You see that in Ramana Maharshi. He often spoke about surrender to the will of God. And of course, he was always teaching self-inquiry. So when we turn our thoughts within, we can do self-inquiry. And then when we're aware of the world and aware of ourselves as apparent agents of action, then we can practice a surrender to God. The two are quite harmonious because the self is a pure consciousness. But when I see a world and when I see myself as acting in the world, which we do, we can deny it, but we're doing that all of the time. There's no use denying it. That's the way we see ourselves. We practice self-inquiry, but as soon as we're not doing self-inquiry, we look around, see a world, see ourselves acting in the world. Then if we exist in the world, if in our experience, we exist and the world exists, then God exists. And God is the power which is motivating everything. And so then I can practice surrender to God. I turn within and seek the self, who is the self of God also. And when I'm aware of the world around me and myself, then I practice surrender to God. The two are quite complementary. It just takes time to find that complementary part.
Thank you.
So now I think there was one more question.
There's one more question. She's unraised her hands, but Kamala asked a question. She wrote it down for me.
Okay.
The question is, why did Brahman feel the need to create the universe in Maya if he is already Satchitananda?
The fact is that Brahman never felt that need, and Brahman never created the world and never created Maya. Brahman is Brahman always, eternally, perfect. In Brahman, there is no world. In Brahman, there is no Maya. In Brahman, there is no, there is just infinite perfection, timeless eternity. So there's no point at which Brahman decided to create the world, because he never did. The world exists in our awareness, not in the awareness of Brahman. Brahman is perfection itself, and there's no world. That's why we don't pray to Brahman. That's why there are no temples to Brahman, because Brahman is perfection itself in itself. And our problem is that we see a world, we see ourselves as agents, we see ourselves as having pleasure and pain, good and bad experiences, good and bad karma, and all of that. That's our problem. And so God is Brahman seen from the standpoint of the world. It's not that there are two gods, God and Brahman. There's one reality, which is Brahman, but we who are seeing the world, we see Brahman as God. And so God is Brahman seen through the world. That doesn't make God an illusion. God is real. It's just that God is the way that we see Brahman now. When a person attains, this is very difficult to understand. I know it's difficult to understand. Even if we understand it intellectually, it's extremely difficult to feel it and to accept it as true and real. But those who have attained to Brahman, when they realize Brahman, they realize, my God, this was the truth all the time. There was no other truth. Brahman is real, and Brahman is all. How did I dream up all of these problems that I thought that I saw? All I had to do was to know the truth, and this is the truth. It was shining all of the time. It was the only truth ever, and yet I couldn't see it. I had all of these dreams of worlds and beginnings and endings and karma and births and deaths and all of that. It was always just Brahman. So Brahman never created the world. Brahman never saw the world. Brahman never experienced the world. Brahman is the absolute in itself. And somehow, and this is what's oftentimes intellectually very dissatisfying for people, but there are reasons for it. There are intellectual, philosophical explanations of it, why it has to be the truth. That somehow we have forgotten that. We who are Brahman, somehow we have forgotten who we are. So our task is to remember who we are. Now, yes, there are all of the ideas about the universe being the dance of God and all of that, and those are beautiful ideas and true from our standpoint. But eventually we come to the standpoint where we see that the problem is just a problem of forgetfulness, even from the standpoint of devotion. That the whole problem is that I've forgotten that I'm one with God. I've forgotten God. That's all I have to do is to remember what I've forgotten. And so from the standpoint of jnana, I have to remember who I am, because that's the truth, and it was always the truth. From the standpoint of devotion, I have to remember that I'm one with God, the beloved, the one with infinite love itself. I was never separated, but somehow I've imagined that I'm separated. And so all of the explanations of religion are just to help us come back to the point where we realize all I have to do is to remember the truth, to somehow find my way. All I have to do is to wake up. I just don't know how, but all I have to do somehow is to wake up. I just have to find a way to wake up.
Swami, how do you shed light then? In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, I'm just remembering when the quote is ego aham bahuyasam prajayeti. So I am one, me be many. And this is the desire. Who is that desire of? Is that the desire? Again, you're not saying it's Brahman. How do you interpret that? Let me put it that way.
There are two ways of interpreting it, and both are true from their standpoint. One is to say that was either way, it was not Brahman who thought that. But one way is to say that was Prajapati, the creator, the deity who creates the universe, who is already within manifestation, but the highest aspect of manifestation, who said, I am one, I want to be many, so I project myself forth. So that was the act of creation. That didn't come from Brahman, that came from Prajapati, the creator, who again is a deity, a part of manifestation. The other way of interpreting it is that it's just a symbolic. That what we find is that the root of our present experience is desire. And that's the root of all of my experience. That doesn't mean that desire is bad. It doesn't mean that I have to squish out the desire or anything. It just means that behind everything that I do, every action of everything, including the action of a bacteria or a fungus, etc., there's a desire behind every activity in the world. Desire is behind everything in this universe. And so I'm one, I want to be many, let me body myself forth. That's a poetic way of explaining the existence of the universe, that somehow there was this moment where we forgot who we were and we wanted to see multiplicity. And this is where we have come because of that desire. So it's framed as God thinking that, but it's the truth about our own manifest being. That's who we are. We wanted to see many for some reason. We forgot that we were one. We wanted to see many, and now this is what we see. So now we have to desire to see one. Again, you can't kill desire. Don't try to say, well, I'm not going to desire anything. You can't do it. Desire is behind everything you do. You turned on your computer to sign into Zoom because of a desire. I'm speaking to you because of a desire. So a desire is there. But what we want to do is to desire to come back to unity. In the midst of all the other desires we have, let them be, let them be. They're not going to go anywhere, they're there. But to develop the desire for unity, whether it's desire for God or a desire for self-awareness, either way, that's what takes us back to unity, where we really, desires fall off of themselves, not because we destroyed them. You can't destroy desire. That's the root of creation. That's the root of existence.
So from the point of view of Brahman, as you said, it is full, it is whole, it is complete. So from that standpoint, there cannot possibly be no desire. There's no Ichcha Shakti within Brahman. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I want to thank Swami Atmarupananda very much, so much for this beautiful Q&A session, for giving his time and his devotion and coming to Asilomar. It's been extraordinary. I only hope that Swami's in France, Paris, so when time allots, Vedanta Life Academy, if you want to do anything, Swami, we're always here for you to be able to. It's not your desire, it's our desire to have you speak, all right? Remember that.
I hope all of you eventually can come for a visit. I see so many of my old friends on the screen. So glad to see all of you. If I mention 3 or 4, then there'll be 50 that I missed. So I'm not going to start mentioning names, but so glad to see so many of you. And my thanks to Harinamananda for his wonderful organizational skills, so which I'm in awe of. And thank you all for coming.
So just a couple announcements before we leave. So one is that mark on your calendars, August 27th, Pravachaka Divyananda Pranaji at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Coast time. We'll send you an email, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, August 27th. We have a Q&A with Divyananda Pranaji. And then September 4th at 5 p.m. Pacific Coast time, our final session with Chris Berlin, Q&A session with Chris Berlin. Okay, we'll send you reminders. And one last thing, because Krishna Puja is coming up tomorrow, our celebration is happening in San Diego, which we're right now in the midst of doing karma yoga, getting everything prepared, where this is where Swami Atmarupananda was. And as he'll say in his words, the longest period of time besides his birth, besides his teenage years, right? So as a monastic.
But actually, it said, no, I spent more years in the San Diego Center than I spent anywhere in my whole life, including my childhood.
All right. So he spent more years back from 1985?
84, the beginning of 84, February 84. Till September 97.
97, yeah. He's been sent. So I'm in San Diego, and so he has a lineage that he's set up. Is we have Krishna Puja, which is our foundation day of San Diego Center, and that will be celebrated tomorrow in San Diego. And as something to as a joyful beginning, I'm going to share with you guys something that we are going to now open up. So remember, we talked about having all the videos. Well, guess what? The videos are now opened up. So you'll see if you go down to Vedanta Life Academy and you go to Eyes Open, Eyes Shut, and then you'll see the videos are actually going to be here for your use. If you go down, and for those that want to see Swami Atmarupananda's talks, we actually have his talks here, all his different talks in the, and his PDFs are here. So you can tune into Swami Atmarupananda in the Vedanta Vedanta Life Academy, and this is going to be available for everybody. All right, so just for not you guys, but for anybody, your friends, anybody who wants to see. We'll send a formal announcement next week sometime when we can do this. So I just wanted you guys to know that, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Swami. Let me just, Swami, people like to see you. Let me remove the spotlight here so you can see everybody at a full glance. And so, Swami, can you give a closing prayer in French for us? We'd love to hear the closing prayer in French, okay?
You're going to put me on the spot. I don't have right now memorized a closing prayer with the French translation of a closing prayer. I can. I think.
What about the one you just did? The one that someone told. No, but we want it in French, not in Sanskrit.
Yes. Conduis-nous de l'irréel au réel. Conduis-nous des ténèbres à la lumière. Conduis-nous de mortalité, de la mort à l'immortalité. Om paix, paix, paix.
Thank you, everyone. Swami, maybe people want to say, if I can unmute, let me see if I can do this. Okay, if you like this, they'd like to share. You can unmute yourself if you like to say what you'd like to say.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Wonderful to see everyone. Thank you, Swami.
Pranam, Swamiji.
Thank
Namaskar.
This has been very precious. Thank you so much.
Yes, it was very wonderful.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Au revoir.
God bless.
Jai Ma.